Welcome to the Rhetorical Analysis Unit for English 1010E at Southern Utah University. First thing I want to do is say congratulations on completing the research unit of this course. It was very intense. 6 weeks of lots of reading and writing and deep thinking. But you've finished it, you did well, and I just want to congratulate you on that because it was a very challenging experience. But through that experiencing, I hope that you learned some really important skills for successful university study. And one of those is critical thinking. The ability to think about and discuss complex ideas and challenge them and question them. The other one is research synthesis. The ability to read from sources and find out how information from different sources compare. How do they agree and disagree? And then produce something new that uses those comparisons. And then finally, your ability to use academic language to express yourself in English. All of these are really important skills, but very challenging skills. And I feel like you did a great job of them during the research unit. Our next unit is the Rhetorical Self-Analysis unit. Now you may remember that earlier in the semester you completed a rhetorical analysis of a TED Talk speech. Now you are going to do another rhetorical analysis, but you're going to do it of yourself, of your own writing, of your own language. Part of this rhetorical self-analysis will involve looking at your rhetoric, or the way that you organize your arguments and you convince the readers. The other part will involve a linguistic analysis where you look at your use of the English language. So for the rhetorical self-analysis, you may want to look at things such as logos, pathos, ethos, and other kinds of rhetorical devices. Repetition. Do you make reference to other things in pop culture? Do you use emotional pleas or logical pleas? So I'm not going to talk this video about how to do that part of the rhetorical self-analysis because you already know how to do that. You can go back and watch the videos about rhetorical analysis if you need a reminder of how to do that. Instead, this video will focus on the linguistic aspect of your self-analysis. So when I talk about linguistic analysis, I'm talking about looking at your vocabulary, your phrases, what types of words are you using? How difficult are these words? What's your sentence length? Overall, how readable is your text? And readable we mean is how easy is it to read that particular text? So there are many tools that you can use to conduct linguistic analysis of writing. There are many that I like to use, but they're very technical and they require to use multiple different websites to get some of this information, and I just felt like that would be take too much time. Instead, I found this very user-friendly website, analyzemywriting.com, when you can click on the link that I'll put on Canvas, and you can look at many aspects of your writing very easily. And then you can use that data, that information, and even some of these charts and diagrams in your written self-analysis. So the first thing you need to do is copy the text from your solutions paper. Go open up your solutions paper in a document somewhere on your computer and copy everything from the title down to the conclusion. You don't need your name or your class, and you don't need your works cited page, but everything else in the middle you want to copy and put in the box that's indicated on your screen where that green arrow is. Once you've done that, go ahead, make sure that the blue button, Basic Text Statistics, is selected, and then click near that yellow arrow, Analyze Text button. When you do that, you'll get a list of many different kinds of statistics about your writing, such as how many commas used, how many words, how many characters, how many sentences. But as you scroll down, you'll also see these two charts. And I think these are the most interesting things you'll find on that page. The first one tells you about your average word length. So this is how many letters are in the words that you wrote. So for me, when I inputted an article that I wrote, my average word length was about 5.33. Okay, so on average I have about 5 letters for the words that I write. And we can see that on the diagram there, that around the 3, 4, 5, 6, there's lots of words, a large percentage of words in that area. As you go further down, it gets smaller. There's hardly any words that are more than 12 or 13 letters long, although there is quite a few words that are around the 8 and 9 word length. Okay, but some words are really short, like 1 or 2 words, and some are really long, like 15. Below that, where the red arrow is, you can see the average sentence length of my sentences. So about 24 words per sentence. That's actually pretty long, okay? But it's not uncommon for academic writing to have long sentences. But if you're seeing something really big, more than 20, maybe up to 30 or so average sentence length, this could be an indication, one, that your writing might be hard to read, but also that it may be an indication that you have lots of run-on sentences, that you're using commas to separate your sentences instead of periods. Okay. If you want to know more about word length and sentence length, you can click on the standard deviation button that you see on the screen there next to the pink arrow, and it will take you to a page, if you keep scrolling down, where it describes different samples of English writing and how the average word length or sentence length might change depending on the purpose of the writing and the audience of the writing. And that could be some good way for you to compare your writing with others. When you've finished analyzing your word length and sentence length, scroll back up to the top of the page and click on the common words and phrases button that you can see there next to the orange arrow. Then, next to the purple arrow, click the Analyze Text button again. When you do that, the website will let you know what are the most common words and phrases of 2 or 3 words that your writing uses the most of. This is actually, in my opinion, the biggest weakness of this website. Other websites do a much better job of providing you with an analysis of the words you use. The problem with this website is that it shows us common words that are common in everyone's writing in English. So for example, you'll see there that my most common words are the, a, to, and, of, that, in. These are common words that everyone in English uses. So they're not really helpful results to me because I know that people use those words. What's helpful for me is to see some specialized words. Badge, students, language, teachers, system, learners. These words are not common in everyday English, but they are common in my writing, and this makes sense because those are the topics that I'm writing about, a badge system to help students and teachers learn and teach better. So it's interesting to see those, but it would be more helpful if this website automatically just removed the common English words from my list so that it just showed me the words that I'm using frequently related to my topic. On the right hand side you see the same kind of thing, only this time it's showing me 2 words that appear together many times in my text. And so number 1 is badge system. That's not surprising to me because I'm describing a badge system for teachers. Some of them are not very helpful, like of the, in the, okay, with the, to the. But I also see in there community ESL. ESL means English as a second language. And ESL program, that's the context that I'm writing about, using this badge system for English as a second language programs with community ESL learners. So this is another interesting thing that you can learn from the website. On that same page, as you scroll down, it will show you sometimes this is called a word map. And what it does is it takes the most common words from your writing and it puts them in a picture or a diagram in really big letters. And then words that you don't use as often, it puts in smaller letters. And then words you hardly use at all, it puts in really tiny letters. So we can see this is a visual representation that, for example, next to the green arrow, the word badge I use a lot, so it's really big. The word class next to the yellow arrow I don't use very much, so it's much smaller. Okay. If you wanted to use this kind of word map diagram in your self-analysis, you could click the download JPEG button next to the blue arrow, and then you could import it into your document and describe what kinds of words you used. Let's talk about another analysis. This one's called the readability analysis. And again, if you hit that Analyze Text button after you've selected the Readability tab, then you'll get the result I'll show you. So a readability measure is a measure of how easy it is for someone to read a text. And there are many different types of readability measures, but many of them are very basic. And really all they do is compare your word length and your sentence length. And the longer your words and the longer your sentences, chances are the harder it is to read and understand what you're writing. So for me, it uses 5 different measures that almost all measure the same thing. And you can see that with the red arrow there. So my average grade level of my writing is about 15. We can see there 15.8, okay, or 15.15. So what this means is that someone would be in grade 15. So in the United States, the high school ends at grade 12. So we would think of university as being grade 13 or 14, 15, and 16. So this is saying that in general, my writing is at a university level. You need to be a university student probably to understand the writing that I'm producing. Okay. So what we'd want to see something that is close to 12 or 13, because that means that we're writing at a university level. If we're seeing a number really low, like 7, 8, or 9, then we're writing lower than a university level, which means our writing is much more easy for someone to read. If it's really, really high, like 20 or 17, something like that, it's much more challenging for someone to understand. And if you want, you can scroll down and there's a variety of different graphs and pictures you can look at. Let's take a look at one last analysis. This one's the lexical density analysis. So lexical density means how many content words are in your writing. And when we say content words, we mean words that generally have important meaning in English. These are our main nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. Words that are not content words are very common grammatical words in English. These are things like prepositions, pronouns, auxiliary verbs. So words like the, in, at, us. Okay? And so the more content words we have in our sentences, the richer and more interesting our language is, but also sometimes the more difficult our writing is, because the reader has to think about more ideas to understand the sentence. So for me, my piece of writing has a lexical density of about 58%, which means that in an average sentence of, let's say we had a sentence of 10 words, almost 6 of my words are going to be content words, and only 4 of my words will be function words. In general, and you can read more about lexical density if you want by clicking that lexical density link next to the brown arrow. In general, about a 50% lexical density is average for most people's writing. Below that, writing tends to be easier to understand. Above that, writing tends to be more dense and could be potentially more difficult to understand. Okay. And you can see there at the bottom of this chart as well that, the red, almost 35% of the words I use are nouns. I use about 7% adjectives, about 13% verbs, okay, and then other types of grammatical categories you can see below. So this has been how to do a linguistic self-analysis in addition to doing your rhetorical self-analysis. With the linguistic self-analysis, you might want to look at sentence and word length. What are the common words and phrases you use? How readable is your text? And how dense is your vocabulary use, or your lexical density? And you go to write your rhetorical analysis, you want to do both things. Talk about your rhetoric, okay, and talk about your linguistic skills. So talk about the logos, ethos, pathos, okay, but also talk about things like sentence and word length and readability and vocabulary. So your rhetorical self-analysis could be about a few pages long, maybe about 2 to 3 pages, and you'll have a title, your name at the top, of course, all that. Then you'll have an introduction where you introduce the purpose of your paper, which is to better understand your ability as a writer. And you'll include a roadmap with your thesis statement, okay, where you'll make some kind of argument about your writing. What are your strengths or weaknesses? And then you'll maybe have some paragraphs that talk about the rhetorical skills that you use in your writing. What are your strengths and weaknesses in rhetoric? Then you'll probably have some paragraphs that talk about your linguistic analysis, word length, sentence length, vocabulary, and you'll analyze yourself in that way and what are your strengths and weaknesses there. And then you'll have your conclusion paragraph. So your plan for this week is first to analyze your solutions paper. You're going to do that both by identifying the rhetorical elements you use in your paper and the linguistic skills you use in your paper. Then you'll create an outline based on the information you learned from your analysis. And you'll make some kind of argument about where your strengths are as a writer, but also where your areas for improvement are as a writer. After you've created your outline, you'll write your draft and you'll submit the final paper this week through Canvas. So this is a short assignment. You'll want to just focus and get it done this week. But you should learn lots of interesting things about yourself as a writer. Again, if you have any questions during this process, please reach out to your instructor.